All right, let's. I want to talk about this congestion pricing thing. It might be a little New York for people, but hey, what are you gonna do? This is pretty insane. What'd you say?
A showbiz baby. You know, in New York. Not you, baby, but the viewers are baby.
Okay, thank you. I won't. I'll stop writing my email to HR.
That's workplace harassment. The wokes.
So, the wokes. Kathy Hochul at the 11th hour decided to cancel congestion pricing, which was a plan that was years in the making. And essentially it was a pricing plan. It was the first of its kind. And a lot of environmental advocates have been in favor of this, as well as people who want our urban planning to reflect like a livable space as opposed to a place for a lot of cars to traffic through. The plan basically made it so that if you were going to enter Manhattan south of 60th Street, you pay up to $15 in tolls. It's all with an easy pass. It's already really expensive to go through the tunnels. This was another phase of that in order to encourage people to use transit. And then that toll, those fees were going to go towards $15 billion of transit construction projects. They took out $15 billion of loans, and those were already about to be in the works, basically. And the congestion pricing was supposed to bring in billions to pay that back. But because she represents the whole state of New York, and suburbia is a part of that, as opposed to like what the interests of New York City residents are, Kathy Hochul decided to just pull it at the last minute after years and years of planning on this front. Here she is announcing this, and she received backlash, which I saw she and her office was kind of surprised by. But that's what happens when you're just trying to cater to suburbia and not the actual city where this is supposed to be targeting it. But here she goes.
Now, it was enacted 5 years ago to achieve two essential goals: reduce traffic and emissions in New York City and provide a funding stream for much-needed capital investments in public transit. It was also enacted in a pre-pandemic period, where workers were in the office 5 days a week, crime was at record lows, and tourism was at record highs. Circumstances have changed, and we must respond to the facts on the ground, not from the rhetoric from 5 years ago.
Can we just pause on the phrase facts on the ground? Does anybody know the origin of that phrase? That is Israel. Right? Am I wrong about this? People can Google it. Israel putting settlers into certain areas to say those are facts on the ground. We de facto have that. Fast forward to 2024, we're talking about annexing those territories. That's the lineage of the phrase facts on the ground. I just thought that was interesting. Interesting point from Zionist Kathy Hochul.
Well, I mean, the last time she was in the news like this on a national level, people will recall that she made an analogy to Canada attacking Buffalo. When she was talking about the Hamas attack on October 7th and said, you know, you'd be crazy to think we wouldn't basically try to obliterate Canada for that attack. And you're like, oh,
like we'd bounce the rubble in Halifax.
We would commit genocide in Nova Scotia. Whoa.
Toronto would be leveled.
People are upset about that?
She's been putting her foot in her mouth a lot lately. I mean, she the other day she said, not the other day, but a couple of weeks back or something, she said she got a lot of flack for saying something like kids in the Bronx don't even know what a computer is or something like that. She's out of her mind.
She is. And she's also just not a good politician. I mean, Andrew Cuomo is such a psycho that I guarantee you part of why she was his like number two and how she even got to this place was because he thought she was incompetent and easily manipulated.
Rashid Khalidi in 2010. Israeli planners have spent this time pushing settlers into heavily Arab-inhabited areas of the city, such as Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, and Abu Dis, in order to create fresh, quote, facts on the ground, a tactic used by the Zionist movement for over a century in order to obtain control over more and more of Palestine.
Wow, I did not know the origin of that phrase.
That's where it comes from.
I also had another question about the congestion pricing. I heard that it was only going to impact like 5% of people driving into New York City. So
I don't know that. I do want to have a guest on.
It could be 90%. I'd be for it.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely.
it doesn't matter, I think, that much, right? And it's also basically if it does affect where you're entering. So if you're entering south of 60th Street, that means that you're coming in like the Lincoln Tunnel, you're coming in the Holland Tunnel, and then I guess there are a few bridges as well. But there are ways to get into the city that is north of 60th Street. It's just because it's so congested downtown, is my guess.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I agree with Matt. Like, I think if you live outside of the 5 boroughs, including in Long Island, it should cost as much to enter New York City via car as it costs to enter Disney World. You should be paying Disney World. You should be paying Disney World prices to come into the city. You can take a photo with Eric Adams. We can put him in Mickey Mouse here. It doesn't make a difference, but you should be paying out the nose.
I should have started with that. If every New Yorker would have been down with that one, there would have been you'd see for the first time every Democrat and Republican in New York hand in hand singing Kumbaya on that one. Charge people from outside the 5 boroughs.
And the problem with this, go ahead.
No, I'd say exactly. You can get an annual pass, but that's still the only way you're paying less.
Well, let's let her finish, and then we'll elaborate a little more here.
Respond to the facts on the ground, not from the rhetoric from 5 years ago. So after careful consideration, I have come to the difficult decision that implementing the planned congestion pricing system risks too many unintended
Suburban
consequences
voters
for New Yorkers at this time. For that reason, I have directed the MTA to indefinitely pause the program. Now, I want to be clear. My team worked into the final hours to find a way to implement this because the goals of congestion pricing in terms of reducing traffic and pollution are important.
But
hard-working New Yorkers are getting hammered on costs.
Suburban.
And they and the economic vitality of our city must be protected.
Okay, so let's pause this for now. I don't need to hear anymore. That's the end anyway. Thank God. Because something like 80% of New Yorkers take public transit. This is not about New Yorkers. This is about wealthy suburban voters, donors, people who she relies on for her reelection campaign. And or constituencies for that the Democrats rely on, I guess, in like the state. But I mean, this is what this affects. Her doing this again. This is supposed to take effect at the end of June. So less than a month ahead of this plan, where they've already taken out loans with the understanding that this pricing was supposed to go into effect. She's scrapping it and then floating like, oh, well, how will we fill this $15 billion hole? Oh, I know. Her suggestion has been reportedly, as of this morning, a payroll tax within New York City, which she's saying. She says that the congestion pricing is hurting everyday New Yorkers. So in order to combat that, let's do another payroll tax, which we know affects workers who are middle income to lower income disproportionately.
Take the train in.
To fill this gap. Right, exactly. So in fact, she's just exacerbating those inequities but claiming that she isn't. This is the map of all the improvements that were planned with congestion pricing that are now in jeopardy because she decided unilaterally as the governor to supersede the democratic process, basically, and put a hold on a project that a lot hinges on.
It's an attack on public
I believe I saw that there was going to be a lawsuit against her over this because it's unclear why she has the authority to do this. Like, this went through many different layers of votes with elected officials and the boards. Like, there's been studies. It's been a huge thing in the making. And it was planned to go into effect at the end of this month. And then she just swoops in on her own. And there's word, obviously, that, she was pushed to do this or convinced to do this by people like Hakeem Jeffries. But at the end of the day, it was her decision here to do this. But also, it's unclear that she has the authority at this point to do this.
Right.
Emma?
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor and read this quote from 2 weeks ago from Kathy Hochul talking about congestion pricing?
Well, this certainly is a favor because this might give me an aneurysm. can we zoom out slightly here? Okay. Walk around many major cities and it won't take long to encounter frustrated drivers caught in traffic jams. Cars spent spewing exhaust on overpacked streets. We determined that the average New York City driver spends 102 hours a year stuck in traffic. Those hours add up to more than 4 days of your life every year. That's 4 days sitting behind the wheel of a car instead of sitting by your kid's bedside, reading them a book, sitting around the dinner table, or reconnecting with a friend. There has to be a better way. So starting next month, New York City will become the first city in the U.S. to implement congestion pricing. We'll charge people $15 every time they drive into New York City's or New York's central business district. So for people out of town, this area is like Midtown Manhattan, Times Square, but also a bunch of office buildings. London, Milan, Stockholm, and Singapore have all implemented similar plans with great success. In New York City, the idea stalled for 60 years until we got it done earlier this year. It took a long time because people feared backlash from drivers set in their ways. But much like with housing, if we're serious about making cities more livable, we must get over that.
That was 2 weeks ago.
That's a pretty good example of what we need. And I saw Nolan Hicks, who's I think like covers, he's a transit advocate, put this out there, and I just saw on Twitter. He says, by law, $3 billion of the congestion pricing revenues must go to the commuter railroad. So if the program, as currently constructed, is financed by an exclusive New York City tax, aka the payroll tax that she's now saying should fund this, it would be a pretty massive transfer from city employers to the suburbs. So it's a tax on businesses within New York City that, if they use the same framework for the congestion pricing, would go to suburban railroads. It's insane.
She might be one of, if not the worst politician I've encountered in like maybe 10 years, 20,
she's up
20
there.
Like the instincts, the inability to make a decision, the anemic policy and political chops. It's world historical how embarrassing she is politically.
I mean,
she might be the first governor to ever declare to decimate Canada. I mean, what was that? That was so weird.
First ever. First in the nation.
She took the Kendrick Drake beef very seriously, and I can't blame her, but, it's over now.
Assad from NYC points out, Hochul lost everyone from progressive nonprofits to every leftist faction in the city, to Chuck Schumer, to Zoran Mamdani, to the Real Estate Board of New York, to the MTA board, to even Long Island's biggest newspaper. I think my camera froze, so I'm just going to take that off.
You froze, but we can still hear you.
Okay, well, I guess, I can still hear me. There's something I do want to bring up, which is... uncomfortable, but I saw this with the Uber Lyft minimum wage decision that Mayor Fry kiboshed a few months ago, and now this, where individual activists who call themselves disabled activists support these decisions, and that is a huge problem for me, for anybody, to be using that sort of say like, actually we need Uber and Lyft drivers to be earning under a minimum wage, or actually we need to support Kathy Hochul in this, despite the fact that these congestion, like you said, would pay for things that would help accessibility in all sorts of all of these public transportation things. It's, I think, really gross. It's a really gross phenomenon that we have on there. It's a type of identity politics weaponization that is becoming really pronounced by liberals in big cities, and I think it's something we need to keep on guard for.
All right, folks.
The thing that really, like, to go off on that, the thing that really bothers me is this idea that there's like people who live in the outer boroughs who are commuting to work, working class people, I should say, in outer boroughs who are commuting to work every day into Manhattan by car. These people do not like, are there people who commute every day to Manhattan by car? Yeah, sure. They're not working class people. Rich people do it. They have their driver drive them into the city or something like that. Or they just pay for the enormous parking lot fees, that like the monthly pass or whatever. Like, working class people. I live in the outer boroughs. It takes me an hour by the 7 train just to get into Manhattan. From where I am in Queens. Have I driven into the city before? A few times, maybe a few times a year. To work? Never. I take the train because it doesn't make sense to do it any other way.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the humble hedge fund manager who makes a measly $350,000 and lives in New Rochelle and then commutes to the city every day via, I can only imagine, like a Bentley or some sort of Rolls Royce, is not working class, is not a hardworking American New Yorker? This is why you're losing. This is why the left is losing.
I know. I'm sorry. Although I forget about. I have a blind spot for those hardworking middle class families making a measly couple of $1 million a year. It's something that I have a real problem with. I'll do better.
Yeah, don't be a richist. Although I will say they definitely
Richism is so pervasive in society.
It's the one prejudice you're still allowed to do. You can be richist and you can be anti-Christian, and God forbid Joel Osteen is in front of you. You'll just have to like do a whole hate crime. But it has worked. It has worked in London, I say tentatively, because ULEZ is always in the news. I was recently there during their mayoral election, and ULEZ is their sort of congestion pricing schema, ultra low admission zone. And I think it works basically the same as it supposedly works in Manhattan, which is that if you drive into the central business district, like, your Five Eyes or Lower Manhattan, you get charged at $15, or in the UK, it's like $15.80 US, and like, I don't know, whatever their funny money is called.
Right.
But yeah, like, and you do hear a lot of people complaining online about it. Certainly, I think there is that aspect of people complaining about it online, about how it's ruined their ability to drive into the city for a quick whatever. But like Matt says, if you're doing that, you don't value your time anyway. So you might as well just pay a little extra and get in a little faster.
Right. I mean, I will say when I did see the details of a while back, and I'm supportive of this plan too, up front. But I will say when I saw the details of it, and I was like, those sneaky bastards, they put everything below 60th Street, and the free way to drive into Manhattan from Queens is the Queensboro Bridge, which brings you in at 59th Street. And I was like, you bastards. But I'm still supportive of the plan, because the amount of money it would cost me, the number of times I drive into the city, which I should say I do that when I'm visiting a family member who lives in Upper Manhattan. I visit them maybe once or every 1 or 2 months or something. So it would cost me an extra $120 a year, maybe something like that. I mean, because on Sunday there's free parking around their area, so that's why I would drive in. But otherwise, I take the train. You don't ever drive into Manhattan Monday through Saturday, especially, and expect to like just drive in and not pay a lot of money. So like you're gonna have to pay for parking those 6 days of the week. So what's the extra $15? Nothing. I mean, it really isn't in the big picture. Parking in Manhattan is already like $45 at least.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.